Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fraser Daniel, and today I'm going to be discussing Obama's bad policy. This is in regards to the Taking Sides article that we read this week, which discussed President Obama's climate change plans, and it discussed the pros and the cons of the plan in relation to the United States, as well as the economic benefits that it would have on the United States. So, starting with the no side. The no side was presented by Senator James Inhofe of Oklahoma. He gave this while on a speech on the Senate floor. He discussed a couple different elements of Obama's climate change plan and talked about what was wrong with them and the different things that need to be changed. One of the things that he talked about was Amendment number 2615. This would prevent the EPA from making any new legislation or putting in any new regulations without it complying with Section 321 of the Clean Air Act. This Section 321 states that whenever a new regulation is put into place, the pros and cons economically must be presented before Congress so that they can see the benefits and make sure that they're making the right decision as to whether or not to pass the bill. One example is the 2011 Maximum Achievable Technology Act, which stated that it would create 46,000 temporary jobs along with 8,000 permanent jobs and also help the climate. However, according to an economic consulting firm, there was actually a loss of between 180,000 and 250,000 jobs just by 2015 within that first 4-year span of the act being in place. The EPA didn't present this because they were afraid that it would take away from the bill. The second thing that Senator Inhofe talked about was Amendment number 2605. Amendment 2605 was a push to be able to get federal lands open to drilling for oil and fossil fuels. Currently, only 17% of federal land is available for these services. The other 83% isn't. However, if these federal lands were able to be open to drilling and to oil for natural gas and different natural resources like that, the United States could become self-sufficient with energy as early as 2024, while right now it's looking like we wouldn't be self-sufficient until closer to 2035, so it would save a lot of time. Also, opening this up would create as much as 2.5 million new jobs and would put in another $14.4 trillion to the economy just through implementing the other 83% of federal land. The next part is the yes side, which was presented by Barack Obama at one of the White House Correspondents' Dinners. He talked about his act and all the different pros that it brought and showed the different ways that it was benefiting America. The first part he talked about was the Recovery Act. The Recovery Act was the single largest investment in green energy and technology in United States history at $31 billion put into this act. He also talked about the Climate Action Plan, which was hoped to double the amount of renewable energy that was being used by 2020. Through using this, through increasing solar, wind, and hydroelectric power, they would hope to increase the amount of renewable energy being used and begin to phase out the non-renewable resources like oil and natural gas that were being used today. One of the big pushes with this plan was a grassroots effort. They knew that through politics and through broadcasting on wide media, they could appeal to some of the higher earning families in America, but to some of the blue collar families, they were afraid they wouldn't get through. And so they went around in a very grassroots effort to try to show them the benefits that were going to be coming around to them. Next, I'm going to explain some of the cons and the reason that I agree with the no side of this argument. Starting with the Climate Action Plan, according to an article by the Fiscal Times, which was taken from a Chamber of Commerce study, they determined that the Climate Action Plan would cause a loss of around $51 billion a year, every year from 2014 all the way through 2030 in the United States GDP. They also discovered that by 2025, over 442,000 jobs would be lost just because they were shifting away from renewable energy and moving towards the new green energy jobs. But all those jobs in coal and oil and natural gas would begin to fade away, and many people would be out of work. Also, one of President Obama's main claims was that through these means and through these different acts that he was putting in, greenhouse emissions, CO2 emissions would be reduced greatly. However, through all of these, by the end of the year 2030, CO2 emissions would only be cut by around 1.8%, which is very minimal in the large problem that's going on right now. Also, with these acts in place, electricity costs are going up by $289 billion in the United States alone. Moving on to the Recovery Act, a study by the Department of Energy, as I stated earlier, saw that over $31 billion have been invested in the Recovery Act, which is the largest investment in U.S. history for green energy and technology. In the first quarter after passing, clean energy jobs did go up by 755,000 jobs. However, because these acts were put into place, jobs lost in the first quarter totaled around 2.62 million. So there was many more jobs lost than were created, which was a big hit to the economy. Some possible alternatives that we discussed would be a carbon tax. A carbon tax is simply a tax on any carbon-based fuels, coal, oil, natural gas. So for instance, if you were going to get gasoline, there would be an increased price because there would be a tax on it. This would make people sway a little more towards electric cars than it would towards carbon-based cars with gasoline, and eventually be able to make the environment cleaner. The one downside of this, of course, is that there would still be a great impact on the economy from such a large tax being put on one of America's leading industries. A better alternative that I thought about was just letting the free market take its course. As technology has been improving and the technology continues to move towards electric cars, sooner or later the gasoline-based cars are going to be pushed out of existence. And even if it takes a longer amount of time, the less impact that it has immediately on the economy is going to benefit us in a very great way. So we'll be able to slowly make the transition, the environment will begin to recover, and everything should be able to work out fine. These were the references that I used. Thank you very much.